Good afternoon, everyone. It's 4:01 on September 15th, 2021. This is Lake County Schools and LCEA Bargaining. We'll open up if LCA, if you'd like to go through a roll call of your team members.
Yes, I am Kathy Smith. I'm LCEA president. And I will say, if those that are actually on the team that received the original email, if you would make sure that you say who you are, and we can go from there.
Elizabeth Emery, LCA Vice President.
I'm Angela Dawson, FEA Bargaining Specialist.
Tony
Okay.
Beckett, LCEA.
Tracy Wood, LCEA.
Kirsten Olafson, LCEA.
Amy Gordon, LCEA.
Tessa Clark, LCEA.
Heather Jablonski, LCEA.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, Chad Farnsworth, Lake County Schools.
Guido Zamora, HR Director.
Jamie Sidoric, Lake County Public Schools.
Jake Stein, Lake County Schools.
Dorinda McKinney, Lake County Schools.
And I believe that's what I've got for now. Ms. Sycamore was out for personal reasons, but she'll still have the recording and be able to get the minutes and everything together that we need. I've got a couple other principals that were held up with other issues, so they'll be joining us as we come. I know Ms. Llewellyn was planning on joining us, Robinson Llewellyn, and I'm sure Ms. Shepherd might be along shortly also, so we'll see who pops in for us, and I'll let you know if they come in.
All right. I just want to, I guess, say they wanted to make a statement basically that it's a little bit harder on Zoom, and Angela and myself will be doing most of the talking. If somebody needs to say something, they can go through our other information that we need to, and I can always then address those people that need to speak and say something. Thank you very much.
All right, I've got the agenda that Elizabeth sent over. I can go ahead and share that on the screen if you guys want to kick off and start going through the agenda.
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you.
Is that big enough for everyone? Then I can scroll down as we go. Okay.
Number one is the term of the contract, which of course is this year. Do we need to discuss the fact of what we were wanting to try to discuss? And we talked about it earlier, Chad, on our meeting, that we were trying to do, kind of get through this year, but we would still continue basically whole book.
Yeah, I just what I would like to do is definitely, if you guys can lay out what your thoughts are on that, and then we can have a discussion on how we see that as far as goals and timelines, you know, compensation language and ratification.
All right. We would like to see basically that we have if you look at number 5, we basically have Article 10, 11, and 12. There may be some other articles that come in through some other monies, basically through once we end up dealing with probably MOUs for the TSIA money, and then MOU for ESSER funds and so forth, that would come up possibly in a couple of other articles as supplements and so forth. So that may be like Article 16, but that would be something totally different. Language proposals right now basically are 10, 11, and 12. And then discussing those a little bit, and then if we could possibly then get ratified during the school year. Let's say by January, just put something out there, and then, but continue the whole book since this is full book year. But it would be nice to be able to get something done, and then we could continue talking on language then, like in the spring, trying to get things done then for next year.
I'm a little bit confused because it almost seems like we're talking about getting some things done and then postponing full book. But if we're
Right.
going to do that, why wouldn't we follow the normal introduction of articles and the process that we're accustomed to? If we're postponing full book, I'd say we need to postpone full book rather than treat this like full book or half book.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me.
And I thought our discussion from this summer was that we really ought to do a 1-year agreement because of the timing of the TSIA settlement. I do not believe that waiting until January is going to make the DOE happy. So I'm worried that they'll come down hard on the district.
And I'm not like you say, you're worried. I'm not sure what it'll look like. Some kind of, they pick and choose when they're going to be hardcore, don't they?
Exactly.
Yeah, my question is I definitely would like to. I mean, I feel like the TSIA stuff needs to be on the forefront and handling that. As far as I just don't want to wait and us not have something ratified because we're trying to do full book in a very compressed amount of time. I mean, I'm fine if we want to push through full book and that's our goal.
I don't know how we could continue and have the full book right now to be, whether it's now or whether it's after we do TSIA. I'm just not for sure whether we would have time to do all that.
Well, I feel like, because I mean, you guys have already, if you're already introducing what a number of articles that's beyond the normal process, then you guys, I would feel like we need to scale the articles back if we're going to do a partial and push full book off till next year. The TSIA, I mean, we're essentially talking about what they've added into that is the $500,000 of new money. And I know this gets further into the agenda, but as far as the request you guys made to plug that in on your guys' end, being that today, September 15th, like I told you earlier, we have that data available and we'll give that to you in the morning because it's solidified today. I will be reviewing it first thing in the morning and getting that. And we can plug that, you guys can plug it, we can plug it, and then come together in a subcommittee. I'm not sure that that's going to take as much time as it did last time, especially with that small amount of money. There's just going to be a couple of decisions that need to be made probably on the front end on how that's going to be, that 20% when it's such a small number is going to disappear real quick, especially if you're following similar philosophies of last year. So I could see us getting through that piece pretty quick. Some of the ESSER stuff, like you said, if that's going to be handled through MOUs, that's going to require, we're going to put together some outside of the bargaining process to set some priorities with you guys as one of the stakeholders involved in that, and see how we can direct that money. I think there's going to be a lot of freedom with it, but we could probably handle that through MOUs outside of a full contract ratification. I mean, we could ratify the MOUs what are you guys, as far as those two pieces and timelines, what are you thinking about?
If you have the bargaining unit data tomorrow, as soon as you have the data, then we can sit down and figure out some thoughts with the TSIA, because part of the TSIA language actually talks about the money that you got last year. They said you get that same amount and then the new piece on top of it. When you go through and you examine that a little more closely, there is some money there that was used last year that's not going to be used. So we have to kind of recapture any lapse in that. Otherwise, they will probably come back and say, we don't approve your plan and you have to come back and do more money. So I think it's going to take a little bit of diving into, but I agree, a subcommittee that likes numbers is probably the best way to go. And as soon as the data is in, we can probably set that date.
Okay,
We're meeting internally the 27th, so maybe by the first week of October, do you guys think that you might be ready to go?
absolutely. I know the sooner the better on that with the state looming. I think anytime from that last week in September to October 1st, if we can aim for that week.
Well, we're meeting on Monday that week. What does the team, is September 29th, that Wednesday, good for you guys, or Tuesday or Thursday? I have those days open.
Either one will work for that, because I imagine as a subcommittee, it's probably going to be myself, our data specialist in HR, and Guido and Mr. Ward. So I won't have to pull principals for that. So we will be good. I imagine we're good any day. Tuesday or Wednesday works for us.
Are you still
And-
thinking that we would do it virtually? Just because I'm I'm almost 2 hours away. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, we can do a combination. My team will probably just be in Mr. Ward's office, so we'll have all data at hand, and we can Zoom. He's got a screen that we can Zoom into. And if Kathy and Elizabeth want to come over, we can do it in the boardroom, whatever works best for them. And we could definitely figure out a way to remote you in there.
Okay. And then we can decide whether the Wednesday may look better in case we want, do we want some of our data people that we're wanting to help with some of the money and some of that for the TSIA, they may want to join, which they could probably join by 2 o'clock, I would say for sure.
So 9/29 at 2 o'clock with the option of Zoom. A matter of housekeeping on that, and Angela, you might know a little better. As far as subcommittee meetings, do you guys accustomed to noticing those and having them open to people? But because they're subcommittee, we don't have to do that.
They're not bargaining because we don't come with proposals or agreements. The subcommittee is to drill down to find out how much money is available, how many people are we talking about, and then come from there to bargaining to come up with ideas, so that we bargain in the sunshine, but we want to talk about people's data privately.
Gotcha. That's why I want to make sure that, and we just would come out of that and bring it back to the whole group to have presentation and discussion.
And I think once you get down to how many people and how many highly effectives and how much money there is, the rest of it's a formula.
Gotcha.
There's not much to do after that.
Yep, just gotta make sure the formulas are working right and everybody's included. Oh, I think that's definitely a good plan for the TSIA. As far as ESSER, we've gotten a few components of our ESSER 2 have been approved. There's still some large chunks that have not. DOE's reviewing some of that. And then I know we're waiting for DOE to release the ESSER 3. What are you guys hearing as far, are you guys hearing anything on those funds from your direction?
We have not, and I have not heard anything from USDOE, but I can tell you that I believe as soon as all of the budgets are adopted and presented to DOE, at that point, the information will come. I
Okay.
really think they're waiting for you guys to settle your budgets first. That's my crystal ball.
And all those should have been hammered out this past week. So hopefully, that's what Scott started to see some movement on those right away, with pieces being approved with DOE. So I guess we'll kind of hold for now on that and just know that we've got some processes and some steps to go through with those as they release more detail.
So do you want to add COVID and ESSER to the agenda, like just as a touch point each time to say what's cooking, where we're at, or we think we might need an MOU on this, or do you prefer just to handle them as they come up? I'm just saying, do you want to do a record keeping here or just leave that outside of this process?
To me, right now, I think we can leave it outside just because of
Okay.
the volume of work we need to do inside of it probably. And if something becomes significant and we need to, have some impact bargaining and add it to a larger session, then I think that's fine.
Okay.
So then that brings us back to the standard bargaining procedure and how we're going to handle the full book of bargaining. So you guys are saying because of the late start for this year and all the shenanigans that have gone on around it, that you want to delay full book until we look at 22-23 contract.
Well, basically, I mean, we're still kind of doing the same thing because we're only saying 10 and 11 right now. 12 is compensation, so that's kind of what, I mean, that's the funds.
Yeah.
So basically, right now, we're still saying, the 2 articles.
Okay.
So I'm not.
That makes sense, because earlier I was thinking that there were 4 articles, and now that I see compensation, and I thought there was one other one though.
Well, I think I was saying 16, but that's going to be because of the ESSER stuff. I mean, it's kind of like
Okay.
a supplement. It's things that, which is 16, I believe. But again, it's something that it's just the ESSER fund stuff. So it wouldn't be anything different in that case.
Okay, that's where I was a little confused, because opening up the differential pay sometimes can be that's a large undertaking. So, but if it's just in reference to working out the ESSER things, then you're right. We're at these 2 articles, 10 and 11, which that's the meat and potatoes of everything we talk about pretty much every time anyway.
Yeah.
So
We
All
did
right.
want to bring up I think we had a comment to make in 12, less than a big thing to chew on. Just that health insurance is very important and that practice is outlined there. And we just wanted to have a conversation about that practice, about how we can maybe get some more data to start looking more deeply into that. So it's less about reopening it and more about just talking about the practice so that we're all on the same page. So it's not like a big change. It's like, we just really want to put it on the record so we can get some information.
I got you. And I think I glanced at that one as I was going through it, and I saw it was like just talking about plans that might be obsolete, it appeared, or things that might not be functional.
Right.
I think just on a side note, from an insurance committee perspective, I think we need to be taking a hard look at our plans anyway. And I think we'll see that come up as we go to insurance committee this year, regardless. As we've enjoyed some things in our insurance plan, we got to make sure it remains sustainable. So,
yeah. I'm going to make a recommendation to you guys. I asked how often your insurance committee meets, and I understand it's maybe like once or twice a year. where I've pushed everybody very hard that you should work with your brokers to get quarterly reports so you can see the trends that are happening. If you're not watching it quarterly, things will sneak up on you. So I'd say it's time to push your brokers hard to get you guys that's the information, because also COVID costs are going to start affecting your health insurance too.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys need to be able to break those out for your ESSER plans.
And we had set the goal to meet more often before everything hit the fan. And then combined with that, all of a sudden we had a bunch of renewals with the clinics and not the health plans, the other benefit plans like dental and all that.
And
So I
life.
think a lot of our time that we were going to dedicate to coming together more often last year was swallowed up by time spent on some of those renewals. So I agree. We've got to meet more often, especially with keeping tabs on how this stuff's going to trend, because I think everybody predicted an explosion in healthcare claims, and the opposite happened because people didn't want to go to the doctor and voluntary procedures were down. So we've been kind of keeping an eye on to make sure that it doesn't just pump up and blow up, but because it hasn't totally gone away and it's just been kind of a steady up and down, that some of that, the floodgate hadn't opened on that stuff. So we'll get with you guys soon, hopefully. So your representation can be there to work on that, and we can definitely look at how it's represented in language in the contract. That shouldn't be a big deal.
Okay.
So if you guys want to go in, knowing that 10 and 11 are pretty much the focus. Those are the couple articles that we'd be looking at also, and you've got proposals ready. So if you guys want to go through your articles and some of your proposals, I can go ahead and pull those up for you now.
Okay. We need the elevator music going.
Or Jeopardy or something. And that was pretty quick, all things considered, but
No kidding.
if you guys can see it, just let me know if I need to blow it up or take it down any further. And you can instruct me on the scroll and up or down.
Well, I think the first mistake is I put in the contract year wrong. It should be 21, 22.
Gotcha.
I believe that's what everybody's agreeing, is that we just need to do a reopener brief and then start working once we get done with more COVID and ESSER stuff to work on full book next year, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me.
Okay. So yes, that's an easy fix. And so is the workday, which is just editing. It's
Okay.
one word instead of two. So if you scroll down to the first one,
7,
I think it's
7.
7. In section 7, just to add, teachers will not required to post any information related to the instructional framework or the learning log tool, because we are still seeing that some administrators are wanting something still posted. If it's only like a question that's there and that's there all the time, that's fine. But if it like switches daily and that kind of stuff, then it becomes a configuration at that point.
So some of these pieces, I'm not exactly sure we can absorb it, or I know in the past we've had principals speak to certain things that we had questions for clarification. But if you like, we can just sit and absorb, and then we'll kind of go through everything if that's okay with you guys.
Okay, oh, that's fine.
if you-
Also in 7 is the district blueprint. And we may want to differentiate somehow. Is it just using a blueprint, or is it also using a scope and sequence? Because there's some discrepancies, I believe, throughout the county as to what is being used as considered. To me, I'll just say, the blueprint is, to me, the blueprint, not a scope and sequence. It's a blueprint that is a guide that's what we want to use. If you want something else, then that would have to be something else added to that.
Principals, is not to open up a full board discussion, but if you need to ask questions for clarification, so it will help us in our discussions later, please feel free that you can ask clarification questions as we go through.
Okay, I believe the next one is 12. And you can see the strikeouts, basically, it's taking some things out that we had, and basically they will not be scheduled to exceed 1/2 of the day. And these are any of the teacher planning days.
So just for clarification, it's just, so if it's used primarily for self-directed activities, you're just wanting, what's the purpose of removing all that following sentence?
Just to make it simpler, because in saying the fact that whatever the teacher wants to do, it's self-directed, it's the teacher. And they can only take it needs to be scheduled and not to exceed the 1/2 a day. I just recently, I heard something about somebody's already planning something for the end of the 9 weeks, and it was like a full day thing. But again, this may make it easier for somebody to just look at and say, no, it's to be scheduled and it cannot exceed 1/2 a day. Now, we're not putting in there as to how long, whether it just be, for example, scheduled the day before, however they want to do that. And the teachers can, or the administrator can schedule something, it's just not to exceed the 1/2 a day. Because it should be self-directed activities, because that's what those planning days were for to begin with. Now, if the teachers want to go ahead and do collaborative plan or do something else, that's up to the teachers, of course.
So as opposed to what's happening now, Dorinda, are you on still? Or anybody, Sid or Jake, as far as how are those days conducted now on you guys' campus?
I've always been under the impression not to, if we plan any, PD or anything like that, it should not exceed 1/2 of the day. That time is for the teachers, at least 1/2 of the day. And if they choose to meet as a grade level, that's great, but it's not mandatory. And again, if I plan anything, I only plan it for 1/2 of the day.
Pretty much the same here. It just generally is mostly teacher directed. If we do something, it's usually 1 or 2 hours. The only exception would be if we do offer like something that the state says, like the mental health training, that's like 5 hours. We don't make it mandatory for them, but we do offer it for them so that they can choose to go to that.
I think the big piece here that stands out to me is the excluding collaborative planning. I think, we always see an effort for that, anything related to collaborative planning to disappear. And that's something that's definitely important to us. So do you guys want to elaborate on that at all?
I think those are great days to have collaborative planning. And especially if I'm going to ask them to do that, then that would be what I would schedule for it, the half a day. But I think that those are great days to do that. So if I would include collaborative planning for half of the day, then I would at least give the other half of the day for self-directed activities. But I think collaborative planning should be a part, if at all possible.
And I think that, but what we crossed out, I think there's a misunderstanding. We did not say you couldn't do collaborative planning, because before it said faculty department meetings excluding collaborative planning will not exceed 1/2 a day, which implied that you could do collaborative planning for the whole day. We're just wanting to delineate half the day can be scheduled to do the things that you need to schedule, and half is for the teacher. So you could schedule collaborative planning, you could schedule whatever you need to schedule, but you can only schedule up to half.
Okay.
That's what we meant.
And that is such a weird sentence. That's what I need help with, because
Yeah.
when I read it and I'm like, all right,
Maybe we just need to take out the word excluding and leave collaborative planning. Maybe we just struck too much.
I got
The
you.
intention was that collaborative planning is something that you can schedule during your half, just not the teacher half.
Now I understand.
I must have got slap happy with the strikeouts.
Because I feel like in practice in most of the schools, and when I say most, just 'cause I definitely hadn't talked to all of them, they do kind of hold half of that day for whatever self-directed, and I'm not sure how many of them. I know you guys probably hear about everyone that goes beyond that, right? But we just don't hear about it all the time. Okay.
Pretty much. But with having the PLCs and cooperative planning already, it's the days were originally set up to where these were teacher days because of the grades and the so forth. And now eventually they have gotten to where it's no longer really a teacher day because grades are a little bit easier. You don't have to do them paper pencil now. You don't have to do, although sometimes depending on the English teacher, for sure, they may be last minute grading those English essays and whatever they need to be doing. And these are great days for them to be doing that. And that's what these were originally done, is for self-directed activities. And they've become other things instead. And that's what, we're trying to make sure that they realize that, again, the PD, I understand, as Mr. Steins does, the mental health things, but it's like, teachers need some time to plan. I mean, they're overwhelmed.
Gotcha. Okay. We ready to scroll down?
Yes, we're in 15. We added a section D to say the teacher shall have the autonomy to determine the grades of students using the guidelines of pupil progression plans. Again, kind of self-explanatory unless you want something else.
I'm just curious of what the necessity of it is. Because I mean, is there something happening contrary to that? Is what I'm curious if you guys can help me with understanding the purpose.
We are having administrators or county people or both or whatever. I have heard now from several teachers that last year and this year too, but saying that they're supposed to be grading the exact same thing. I've also heard that the grade should only come from common assessments. I've also heard that the, you should really only have the 9 grades, which is in the contract somewhere. And that's all you should have. And it says a minimum of 9 grades. It doesn't say anything else. Myself, I always had more grades because then you could, discard a grade if you wanted from someone because it was a poor grade or whatever. This is saying basically that yes, you can have those things. For example, if an administrator says we want you to have everybody have a common assessment, 1 per each week. Okay, that's 9 grades. But if a teacher would like to take another grade for whatever, an English essay, then they should have that autonomy to say, yes, I want to add that grade to that.
I just want to speak to that, and I go back to your point for that D, Kathy. And I don't know what these other, I'm like, I wonder where this is happening when you bring these up. But I mean, it's pretty clearly written already that the teachers, they pretty much own their grade book, and we really don't say too much on what they can put in. They have the minimum of the 9 grades already, and I think it's pretty clear. I just don't know if that letter D is needed in there at this point.
Well, I can speak differently because at Lake Mineola, we look at the math department for an example. They sat down and decided, because what you want to do is make sure that there's some consistency there. So you have one algebra teacher that may say, I'm going to give 10% of the grade for an exam, but then the other teacher's going to say 40%. So then those parents start questioning, okay, why is it only 10% in one class and 40% percentages of an exam? So we came up with some type of consistency across the board so that an A in one algebra class is the same A as in another class. And we had to have those consistencies because then when we did it, we had parents wanted to transfer out of this class, go to another class, and they all agreed that we needed to have some consistency when it came down to grading.
Okay, that's, and that, I think I get both sides. By the way, Ms. Shepherd and Ms. Robinson Llewellyn have joined the conversation. I told them I'd mention when you guys stepped in. I definitely see the perspectives on that. I think I get the clarification because I have heard of things that coming up like that, and it winds up with not just the administrator, but the teachers being put in some pretty compromising situations because you got teachers within the same grade level or department that don't agree on some consistent grading practices. That's probably been going on since the beginning of time, right?
And could be, and I mean, to Ms. Shepherd's point there, we really weren't concerned about, the different percentages. It's kind of like more the assignments itself, because again, a lot of people are saying they want the common assessments and nothing else, or they want this and nothing else. And so it's more the grading itself and different things versus a percentage, because even when I was still in the classroom, we did percentage because we said like a test couldn't be over, 25% or whatever the grade level and whatever we had decided at that point. And I'm not hearing, anything from that aspect. It's more the actual assignments themselves, like somebody being told, I can't add an essay. I can't add this math test. I can't add, whatever it may be. Somebody being told, well, why do you have 20 grades? Well, if I have 20 grades, then again, I might be able to go in there and at the end of the 9 weeks, I could say I want to drop the lowest grade. Well, if some student has a 0, another one has a 60 as their lowest grade, they still get the lowest grade dropped. If that's what a teacher, would like to do. And you can set the parameters if it's, for example, you know, you say, okay, we need to have the common assessments. Well, those then, okay, I'm not going to drop those. You can set the parameters in there to say, I can drop my other assignments. Because in Mrs. Smith's class, I've got 20 assignments. I only have 10 of them that I could possibly drop a grade from.
And I guess, Kathy, the difference with us is that we sit down with the departments and we come up with the grading, because it may be different for regular classes than honors classes and AP classes, but that is something we sit and listen to as a department, and then we meet with that administrator meets with that department, and that is decided. So, and the bottom line with us, it just has to be a minimum of 9 grades. They can have any others that they have, but just a minimum of 9.
Right, and I think again, some other schools are not necessarily doing that. And if the percentages and those are fine too, that's all right. It's just that they need to realize that, you know, a teacher can add more grades and you can have other things.
I just want to be careful that we're not creating any language that supports the lone wolf. Because that's where we're seeing the issues from a grading perspective, I think. And I think I want to take it back and definitely discuss it with my folks that manage people progression and that have received the majority of trying to hash out and assist our principals in dealing with some of the grading issues that come up. But I think we've just got to give just blanket autonomy. That's going to wind up hurting groups of teachers that have one personality on their team that might not always have the same philosophical approach to kids and grades. So I don't want to put out any language that might cause headache for kids and teachers, and administrators. So we'll take that back and take a deeper look at it.
Okay. And then the next portion that is stricken, we had suggested that that section be moved into Article 11 to be combined with what's called, with the workday, because it would make more sense so that's kind of just a logistical of moving it from here into the other article.
And part of our rationale behind that was we noticed that the early dismissal is mentioned in a lot of different places. We thought it would be better if we put it all in one, just like you guys did with the Joint Leadership Committee, was get it all in one place so it was clear what all the rules were, because we were trying to track it and we got lost. So we thought maybe we could come up with a way to put all the language in one spot.
Okay.
And then we go down to section 18. Oh, it's just a note for me. Okay, 19. In 18, we do want to make sure that when it says the teacher of the year, to try to include like all instructional. And I don't know whether that may be just a discussion that we would have, because it's been kind of brought to our attention that we do that at work sites, but we don't have anything like for the departments.
I think we need that's going to mainly be checking that with the parameters that are set by teacher of the year, set by Department of Education. So we can double check and make sure the common language supports any type of instructional employee.
Correct. And
figure out how we manage that.
Right. And that's why I just brought it to your attention with that. And we can discuss that. 19 is bringing up the substitute issues, especially now concerning COVID situation and what is happening. take out the portion there and put in student substitute teachers shall be employed when available for all absent teachers. Substitute teachers shall be expected to perform all the teacher duties normally performed by the regular teacher as determined by the building principal. When a substitute is not available, a teacher may be required but not, may be requested but not required to substitute during his or her planning time for another teacher or absorb an absent colleague's students into their classroom. Teachers that agree to substitute during their planning time or absorb students into their classroom will be paid half their regular hourly pay as a supplemental salary for the additional work. By mutual agreement, a teacher may request release time equal to the amount of time that they substituted or receive release time based on the number of students absorbed. And then the release time is still there, but then the other writing is struck again, and then we end with all unused release time must be paid out at the end of the school year on the last paycheck of the fiscal year.
I definitely understand it all. Can't say I agree with all, but I think I see what you guys are asking for. So just clarification, if somebody absorbs 1 to 3 students, they're going to get time and a half.
Well, if you consider for that period, they would get, I guess, for that hourly rate, they would have,
Okay, now I see. So you're saying if they, for their planning period,
they would have get half of what they would normally be paid for that plan period. Like right now, when the teachers are like Eustis High School has an MOU for adding some plan periods. So they're receiving their hourly rate of pay. So those people that absorb, or they go into a classroom, or they absorb students, or they do whatever, they are paid half of their hourly.
and then most of our Eustis High School people that are on that is probably because of transit between one campus to
Probably, but
another.
it's that, or they're having the other time. But I think English, I think, was one of them, if I remember right. And
Just asking our principals that are managing where we're at right now, when people are covering during their planning period, how does that play out for you guys? And for the teacher?
We've
Right
been
now,
fortunate
it
enough.
has been very difficult to find subs. And if they need to leave early on that Wednesday or something like that to get their time back, they do. Or they would like to just look at their time, and on a teacher workday, I let them be able to use that time, and they can leave early. So I work with the teacher who, if they're willing, and we do have a good rotation that we use, including administrators, and we're also using some of the Region 3 team to also sub for us as well, because it has been very difficult during this time to get substitutes.
Do you find yourself in a position where you're having to force people in to the classrooms?
No, I guess at Lake Minneola, I have to force anybody. They just know the situation and they pitch in, because it may be a time when they're out and we can't find a sub and someone has to cover their class. That's the way that they look at it. And they kind of help us out wherever we are, wherever we can. We also use all non-load bearing instructionals, as just as guidance counselors, administrators, everybody that we can use to help out, but we never force anyone into covering anything.
Gotcha. But I imagine there are a few voluntold feelings around the district from time to time, so I'm not oblivious to that. I do think I guess in my mind, I'm cautious around putting something in place at a time where we know you've got exacerbated sub shortage issue to begin, a shortage to begin with. Now there's a problem on top of that, and we're just having trouble covering everywhere. If we could figure out some type of incentive for this year and then have this be something that we revisit if we ever get to a normal, would that be something you guys might entertain the thought of?
I mean, like turn this language into an MOU for just this year and pay it out of ESSER?
Yes.
I think we had contemplated that as a possibility.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, let's put some brains around that. Okay. I've got similar concerns because we've been pulling non-instructional also. It's been an all hands on deck. We are hopefully we're going to see we're processing subs as fast as we can. I think we have had a lot of applicants, but unemployment's a funny thing, right? So you get people that apply for jobs that they might not really want. But we're trying to get people in as quick as we can and get that situation improved, but it is a struggle. All right, so we'll look at it and see what we can figure out. Tell me if I can just get anybody from my team as far as COVID related absence versus direct COVID related, because I get it, there might be some mental health absences in there that are an offshoot of COVID related issues, but direct quarantine and COVID positive, do you feel like that's a primary source or just a kind of a side source of all these classes needing to be covered right now?
I can speak for us, Chad, that at Taveri's side, the only times we've had to cover classes this year, fortunately, is when it's somebody has to be quarantined or test positive. Just our regular sub, the teachers are really great about putting in their time, and we generally are able to get the subs. It's just when these happen, for example, last week we had 4 teachers. So, it's hard to get those extra subs on top of when people have already put out.
That's ditto for Taveri's Elementary as well. As only when we can cover everything else, but when you have 3 or 4 teachers, especially some of the same grade level, it's all hands on deck trying to cover.
Well, I will say our Taveri schools have some of the highest sub-fill rates in the district when we pull that data. That subs want to come work at you guys' schools. So I'll have to pull and look at some other schools as our first round of sub-fill rate data comes out here very soon. And so we'll take a look at it and see what we can figure out.
Yeah, because I know that a lot of schools are, because it's easier to pull them. I mean, I understand doing that, but the ESE teachers are pulled a lot to substitute. And then of course the students aren't getting their accommodations. And so, I mean, that's difficult too. Or even if you're doing, you're subbing one day, well, then you accommodate the next day. Well, then the kids are losing their, that automatic thing, they're losing it. It's like, it's not that every day with those teachers and with that, what they need. So it's difficult for them.
Absolutely. ESE is the one that worries you, right? Because that's anytime, even when we have TAs or teachers out in those classrooms, it's has a huge bearing. And you move a VE teacher, it's kind of like triage at that point. You're moving a VE teacher in to cover because they've got some ESE certification and some skills to cover maybe a self-contained class, but then you've got peppered accommodations that might be falling behind. So okay.
Okay, then I think The other items, if you look on 22, section 22
Okay.
and 31, we were just kind of recognizing, are these still the same policy numbers? I mean, some of these numbers may have to be updated, possibly. I don't know. We were just kind of, we just highlighted them just to make sure.
If they're in the 3000s, that signifies that those are new policies. They're
So
updated.
those are the new Neola.
Mhm.
And I think that was it for Article 10. Article 11, it starts with section 2. And basically you're just taking out faculty meetings. They can be scheduled on a Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday morning, whichever one they have it, because these are these little 30-minute things, something before or after school. So if, I mean, something like an emergency, you have to have, you know, an IEP meeting, have to have a parent meeting, fine, that's something that's there. But faculty meetings should be on like the Wednesdays, that's what they're there for. Or you send a quick email. Now, if you have to have a quick thing because it's an emergency and you're having a 5-minute meeting or something, I mean, that's, you know, something different, but.
Okay.
And then continuing to section 3 in that, or sorry, number 3, that same section. Implementing the above, instead of having reasonable, you have a 2-week advance notice. Reasonable is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of.
Yeah, that I have to speculate that reasonable is probably to provide some freedom. So basically what you're saying. So
Because this section is talking about the workday. So if they're wanting to change something in the workday, then they should at least be able to have, you know, a 2-week notice that something is changing in a workday.
So we took it from like the
Activity.
childcare aspect too, like if I have to make arrangements with a babysitter or a family member to pick up kids after school, that short notice, while it seems reasonable for the school, it can be very unreasonable for the family to adapt. So we're just trying to define reasonable.
And like, for example, we did have one, a teacher example. All of a sudden they changed the Wednesday. It was, I believe, a middle school, and they decided that they would do the early, going in early. And it wasn't one that was doing that originally. And teacher had no idea. And she's like, I can't do this. She says, you know, they want to start this like tomorrow. And again, similar to what Angela is saying, it was like, okay, I can't do that.
okay, I understand.
So basically, this is just something to say, okay, if it, like, for example, the middle school, if they want to come in at 7:30 instead of 8:30 to have their meeting in the morning, so everybody can leave at 3:30, which is fine. But you should have a 2-week notice to be able to try to figure out what I need to do with my childcare, for example.
That makes sense.
Then it goes down into section 3, the second paragraph. 45-minute uninterrupted planning period. I don't know why the beginning with the 1920 school year was in there, but I think we can take that out. And then basically you would have the 45 minutes and it results in supplementary pay based on the teacher's hourly rate of pay if there's any type of deviation from that.
So I guess I'm a little bit confused on what are you,
It's basically would be the uninterrupted planning period.
yeah,
On the non-early, except, when Wednesday, basically. Time before school or during student passing are not included in the total. Any deviation from this requirement that includes less than 45 minutes will result in supplementary pay based on the teacher's hourly rate of pay.
so I guess,
So if somebody is doing and have to do a split time or have to do something different, then they should be able to have compensation for that.
but if they're getting the same amount of time, I mean, I know what it boils down to, right? It boils down to, teachers that, in all honesty, probably have a lighter load, and because they're on a wheel or they're on some type of wonky elective schedule, and there might be some interruption. I get that, because they're having to split some of the time to make the schedules work. And I definitely want to see if we can figure out how to avoid that at all costs. But I guess I'm having trouble picturing what supplementary pay looks like for that.
There's also hearing things about the adaptations for like block scheduling, things like that. And if things were to change, then you've got issues with, you may not have plan period one day, but yet you have two the next day or whatever. I mean, there's other things that are, because everybody is supposed to have a daily plan period according to the contract.
I got you. I know that if we had to get creative with some type of, I feel like we had to get creative with some type of block scheduling. It's probably going to be out of necessity, or there'll be a much larger conversation that would probably generate some impact bargaining anyway. So I'm, okay, I'll have to think about all that.
Okay. And then it continues down where it starts with collaborative planning to take out sub coverage. And then see the joint leadership committee for that. And then continuing, basically you would, long story short, you would take out C becomes B. If the second planning period is required in a week, teachers must be paid for the planning period outside established work hours.
So basically, it's just removing. I'm sorry, I know I'm probably making y'all's eyes cross scrolling back and forth, but
Questions on that?
I think when you take it in pieces, it's kind of hard to get your brain around it, but really it's all about the planning times during the week as well as the early dismissal. Our thought process was rather than splitting what things can and can't be used for, and then trying to make sure that this got used correctly and that got used correctly, it was like, what if we just pushed all the required meetings into the Wednesday? That way teachers have their planning times during the week. And then if you have to pull somebody 3 times a week for an ESE meeting, because if they scheduled all the staffings and the person loses planning time, then you pay them for that additional time, because all the work they were gonna do now has to be taken home because they had to do the ESE staffing on the student. So if you think about it, all the little pieces in the big picture is how do we guarantee planning time, but also make sure that the administrators have their time too to run cooperative groups and collaboration and PLCs and staff meetings, all those things where you need people from different departments to work together, which you can't do in a planning time because they may not all have common planning.
Gotcha.
You almost kind of got to read all the pieces together before it makes sense.
And that's what I was, not for right now, but just, and tying that back up, how it relates to the joint leadership committee and things like that. I get what you're saying. I just, and then if we can figure out something to cover the contingencies of the emergency sub coverage. I know that's probably not a favorite of being listed in here because it pretty much mandates that we can require them to provide some emergency sub coverage. It's just hard at a time when we know we have to have it. But we're, like I said, we're addressing that maybe in another area. So, okay.
And then section 4 is just changing rosters to instructional periods.
This will, I get what you guys are, I get what you're wanting there, I feel like. So I'll have to look at that and see, because there's some pretty heavy restriction that comes along with that. And yeah, I would need some reassurance that then we're not turning around and saying that anytime that is, in the next paragraph, set aside for intervention and acceleration is then determined to be an instructional period, and then all of a sudden we've got a war over intervention and acceleration. So are you guys somehow connecting those two pieces, or is this just something different?
It's literally not a gotcha. It's literally because once you guys have gone to doing your rosters of students in the computer, if you have an ESE classroom, you could have 8 different rosters because you have 8 different students enrolled in different classes.
Yeah.
We think the word originally meant the old ways when you got a list of the kids in your class, and we
Yeah.
wanted to make that very, very clear. And that's why we added the word instructional period.
Yeah.
Because it's very clearly the other one, it says it's not instructional because there's no lesson planning. But I do think that you may have to do some work on both sides, us educating members and administrators, not using it as an additional instructional period, and that it's purely for intervention only.
I agree. I think that's what, it just needs a little work, right? Because that was
Yeah.
what I imagine you had the privilege of trying to take a look at the grievance that was floating for a little while, and it was like I don't think anybody was happy with just how to untangle all that. But okay, I get what you're saying. Ready to scroll down?
Yes. Section 6, the faculty meetings, and I'm pretty sure we alluded to this in the past, that no one really knows why it's there. So we think we can take that out. I mean, faculty meetings should be done during usually the Wednesdays, which if you scroll down, it kind of goes into new sections 9 and 10.
Okay.
New section 9 was from the other section. That was the one that was removed from Article 10 and now into Article 11. And then there's a new section 10 for the weekly early release, where the early release is scheduled every Wednesday during the student school year. The purpose of the early release Wednesdays is for faculty meetings, professional learning communities, professional development, or any other administrative meetings.
What drives the desire to bring the weekly early release into the language?
Just to stipulate, and in the past, we had it to where that it was used for certain things and certain Wednesdays were used for those. And just to put it to think that it was stated to where, because most of the time they are being used. And if that's the case, then you might as well say that teachers basically are down to 5 plan periods and not 6. Because I know in the past, when we were thinking about that teachers should have 2 plan periods out of the 6, the Wednesday afternoons or Wednesday morning, whatever, you had that extra time that you had was one of these things. And if that's going to continue, then this would be the way of doing that. It's just, it hasn't been in the contract at all. There's nothing that's been there, and now it's in the contract. It's kind of like one of those things now, whether they're still being used, but I know that professional development, usually like in the county, is, I believe it's either the 2nd or 3rd Wednesday, but it's in the contract stating that they're usually for that.
Okay.
Because again, it's never been stated. It's kind of one of those things. I mean, if you don't want it in here, then okay, but we're not going to have any meetings on that Wednesday morning or Wednesday afternoon. It's fine with me.
In terms of what I was thinking, I'm thinking in terms of, okay, yeah, there's times where like, man, we get into trying to make up minutes, because whether it's hurricanes or pandemics or wherever the heck we're faced with, whatever year, and hopefully never both at the same time. But I mean, those are things we usually work out, and it's not a major issue. We got to make up minutes on some of those Wednesdays, or
Correct.
or have to figure
Correct.
it out. Okay.
But in the past, as I said, I think like the first Wednesday was supposed to be faculty meetings. The second Wednesday was PD. The third meet was, I don't know, something else. I mean, but there was like a schedule that, and it was just a monthly schedule. And then if you had a 5th Wednesday, it was for sure just extra teacher planning usually. So, I mean, it would be nice if the teachers didn't have to have these, but the early release days, I think years ago, were put into place so that these would be the time to do these extra meetings so that teachers could have their regular plan period. 5 days a week.
Does anybody on my team have anything they want to share on that or clarify? Or
I know, I just want to say that while there never seems to be enough time for teachers to plan. So it usually does take at least one during the week at their choosing. Usually the grade level decides on what day of the week that they would like to get together. And then we do have, our Wednesdays. That what happens some Wednesdays, though, depending on if they're ESE, I know that's when ESE does their professional meetings. Kathy, you're right. It is the 2nd Wednesday of the month. So there are some district things that come. So not every single Wednesday is available, so I'm a little concerned about putting into language, because we've already been encouraged from the leadership team from the district to utilize our Wednesdays for additional planning and professional development rather than than the Wednesdays. But sometimes it just depends on what you're having and what people are available to meet that need. But I think we do, make every effort to protect that time during the week. and utilize Wednesdays as much as possible.
Okay, thank you. That helps me a little bit. And that looks like 11. And then we can look at the, you guys had some pieces in 12.
Oh, yeah, it was section 5.
And 5 and 12, and psychologist is spelled wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5 and 12. 5 just adds upon their termination of employment for any reason. And just changes the language. I mean, it's just restating it.
It probably wind up there because it's basically probably statutory language because it mentions normal retirement. It's basically death or normal retirement when you start talking about, and it talks about it. So I get what you're saying.
We looked at the statute and it doesn't just say death or retirement, it does say upon termination, and most
Okay.
districts pay out any employment beyond 3 years.
I'll have to review the statute and take a look at it.
Okay. And then section 12 just adds the Joint Insurance Advisory Committee will review plans on an annual basis to recommend canceling.
I think the only struggle I have with that is that I think we can agree to do that as an insurance committee, but to put in contract language that dictates what the whole group's going to do as a committee, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. But we can get feedback and see.
Yeah. Well, again, it does say it's just recommending.
And we should be doing that anyway. So I guess that's the whole point, right? If we're an insurance committee and we can come to a collective agreement on that, then I think that's fine. Every year we're going to review our plans and make some recommendations, because I've seen some districts that wind up stacking up 5 plans, and it's all it does is spread everything so thin that it's counterproductive to the overall plan. And then I've seen some that maybe don't have enough options. So I think we can definitely bring that into action. I just don't know whether it needs to be in one contract's language.
We kind of thought that it would be easier on the board if the people that specialized in it could make a recommendation to them rather than making them try to figure it out. But we thought we'd been helpful.
Well, we try to do that.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we get sent back to the drawing board to redraw the same picture using a different color marker, and then we just come back and eventually we get there. But so joint insurance committee is interesting sometimes, but we'll definitely I can tell you we can commit to that to review the plans. That's I think that would be a great pleasure to us, because I feel like you get some groups in that committee that have a death grip on a certain plan, and it's not beneficial to all. So I definitely get the sentiment.
That's where having group norms about how you decide mutual agreement versus outvoting people sometimes is helpful.
Gotcha.
So did you guys think that there were any articles that you wanted to talk about at all, or?
I think to be honest with you, 10 and 11 on those
Same
areas are same ones. What I'd like to do rather than just rehash is we had a couple of pre-bargaining session planning meetings that got swallowed up by the great mass debate and some other issues over the last couple of weeks, and an attempt me to keep my my friends here that are principals from killing me. We know these folks have been with us for a little while, so they I think they'll be prepared to step in, and it's the same topics. Your team will tell you that. But you definitely have some new ideas that you guys have brought forward. So I do want, rather than just rehash that stuff, what I would prefer to do is set up some times in the very near future to jump right back on it and get back together. Because some of these are related, I'm gonna have to have two different levels of prep. Just as we do when we open, I usually get feedback from senior staff, and then also I want to be able to meet with my team to discuss that, and I'll probably have them phone some friends on that. So as far as I know we've got our meeting date set for looking at the money stuff. Can you guys, I'm assuming you guys can come together before that date for language, right? Or is that the first time is that 9/29 the first time?
Are you talking to us or your team?
I'm talking to you guys.
Well, next week,
We have a team meeting on Tuesday, correct? The 21st?
we have among ourselves, yes.
Right. And then we have another meeting set up for our team to review the data prior to the 29th so that we're ready for that.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm fine with it. Let's see. I mean, it can be after that. And I know I saw where you guys want to try and hit on some Tuesdays and Thursdays, but I know that might be hard for teachers and administrators. Did you guys ever get any further input on that from your people?
Yeah, that's why we mentioned it. There were some that wanted to try to not have them only just on Wednesdays, because sometimes the Wednesdays are like the PD days or different things like that. And so then they would miss something like that on that Wednesday.
So I'll throw out I mean, I know this is a week after, and that would give us a chance to give a preliminary report back, but like October 5th on Tuesday.
We already have that meeting held so we're good. We've already put it on our calendar.
Okay.
So
Turn it
yeah,
into a bargaining session?
Yeah.
so yeah, could we do it as a bargaining instead of our bargaining committee?
Yeah. We already held the date for us, so we can make it a session as opposed to a team meeting.
And we talked a little bit earlier about getting back in person. So I'd like to do that at you guys' place. I think that was the desire you guys expressed.
Yes, that would be fine.
Being that it's on a Tuesday, principals, what works for you guys from a time perspective?
On a Tuesday, could probably get there by 4:15.
Does 4 o'clock work for everybody on my team?
Yes.
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 That's fine.
Can 4 o'clock work for our team though, with a couple middle school people? Maybe cutting it
think
close, unless they can get some coverage.
I think 4:30 is what they're saying.
Can we split the difference, 4:15?
I think 4:30 would probably be better. I know Emmy Gordon works with me over here. Emmy's probably wanting 4:30.
Okay.
4:30.
4:30 it is.
I'm sorry,
So-
what was the date?
October the 5th.
Thank you.
So we've got the 29th for a 2 o'clock Zoom option TSIA meeting subcommittee, which doesn't involve my principals. And then we've got the October 5th, 4:30 at you guys' place.
And I do have a Jabra speaker that will pick up all the voices in the room. So if you want to broadcast it public by Zoom, because there won't be room for public in the room, but there'll be room for the team.
Okay,
And we have one now too, so we would be able to have,
We can hook them all together and hook us all up.
okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys, I guess I need to figure out the, I mean, I should, we've got a full Zoom platform, so it shouldn't be too hard. I'll just get with some of my techie folks and figure it out. The speaker you guys, or the microphone setup you guys are talking about, is it just plugged directly into your PC, into the PC that's hosting?
Yeah.
yes.
And they can daisy chain together so we can hook multiples up to get full coverage from the room.
Okay, what about in terms of, well, I guess if everybody's operating off their own laptop, we might have to figure out some feedback as we go, but I haven't used one of those for a Zoom, so.
Maybe everybody that gets there early will do a little test run just to check it.
There we go. Okay,
So it sounds like you guys are going to bring back some counters to 10, 11, and 12 for us on the 5th.
yes.
September 29th data.
Okay.
Okay, is
Anything else
anybody,
we have to do for sure?
Did that work for you guys for us to email you the files before the meeting?
Yes.
Okay, we just didn't know, and so we sent them to you in PDF so that you'd have a record of what we discussed tonight. Would you like them in Word so that you can send things back for changes?
yeah, if you don't
Because we have them in
mind,
both.
yeah, if you don't mind, if you'll send the Word versions, and that just makes it a lot easier sometimes.
Yeah.
And
Elizabeth, are you setting up the Zoom meeting? Then I'll send the email.
Yeah, I just set up the meeting and sent it an email.
I know that, so after Mr. Zamora and I have time to review the files you guys requested, just to make sure we got everything you need, tomorrow morning, we'll get those to you. And then I'm not exactly sure what you're waiting on from Scott, but he told me he had things forthcoming. If there were things you're waiting on from him.
Okay,
All right.
I don't know who Scott is.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Ward, CFO.
CFO.
All right, well, if we're good, I'll go ahead and sign us off here. It is 5:29, September 15th, 2021. This concludes LCS and LCEA bargaining. We'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.